The rain whispered secrets against the windowpane of the Harper estate. Inside, everything was quiet, perfect. The kind of silence that wealth could buy. Elena Harper sat at her dressing table, carefully removing a diamond earring, her lips still tinted with the kiss of red lipstick. Her hands moved with precision, as if undressing from her mask took more effort than she let on. Downstairs, Daniel was still in his study, reviewing another investment pitch. She could hear the low hum of classical music and the occasional clink of glass. He was everything a woman was supposed to want, successful, generous, and devoted. But that wasn't enough, not for Elena. Daniel had given her stability, luxury, even affection. But stability didn't thrill her. Luxury didn't seduce her. And affection felt like obligation in a golden cage. She slipped into her robe and moved toward the window. Across the dark garden, just beyond the reach of the estate's lights, lay the invisible line between her two lives. On one side, Elena Harper, the perfect wife. On the other, a woman who lived recklessly, loved dangerously, and trusted no one. That other life had a name, Adrian Cross. They met nearly a year ago at a gallery opening downtown. He was all charm and shadows. A former photographer with eyes that seemed to see through her lies. She didn't plan to fall into bed with him. But the first time he kissed her, she forgot she had ever been married. It started as escape. It became obsession. And now, it was becoming a problem. Earlier that evening, they had met in a hotel suite in Midtown. Adrian had been different. Possessive. Cold. "I think I deserve more," he said, pouring himself a drink. "I keep your secrets. I wait in shadows. I think it's time you choose." Elena turned toward him, slow and calculating. "You knew the rules. Rules change." He stepped closer. "Tell Daniel. Or I will." Her heart skipped. Not from fear, yet, but from rage. No one threatened her. Not anymore. She smiled sweetly. "You're bluffing." He kissed her cheek. "Maybe. But if I'm not, what would Daniel do?" She left without another word, slamming the door behind her. Now, staring at the dripping glass of her bedroom window, her reflection met her gaze, calm, composed, until her lips curled into something darker. She had a plan. 3 days later, Adrian Cross was found dead in his apartment. The official cause, accidental overdose. The truth, Elena Harper killed him. It happened with a calmness that surprised even her. She had rehearsed it in her head so many times that the real thing felt like muscle memory. It began with a dinner invitation, her idea, of course. "I've been thinking," she'd told him on the phone. "Maybe you're right. Maybe I should choose." Adrian's laughter echoed through the receiver. "So Daniel's finally getting the truth? Let's talk in person." "My treat. I'll bring wine." He didn't suspect a thing. At the apartment, she played her part perfectly. Flirted. Smiled. Touched his arm when she spoke. The wine was already poured when he stepped out of the shower. Red for him, white for her. She'd been cautious, used gloves, wiped every bottle, every glass. Even brought her own corkscrew. Adrian never even noticed the crushed pills dissolving in his drink. A sedative, prescribed to a friend of Elena's. The dosage was just right. Not enough to kill. Not yet. He was still conscious when she sat beside him on the couch, stroking his hair as his breathing slowed. "Elena," he murmured. She smiled down at him. "Shoo. You don't get to ruin everything I built." Then, with gloved hands, she wrapped the belt around his neck and pulled. No struggle. No screaming. Just a slow fading away, like turning off a light. Afterward, she set the scene. No signs of forced entry. No fingerprints. A half-empty bottle of pills on the nightstand. His phone placed neatly beside it. She even sent a few fake texts to suggest depression. Then she walked out into the night like she had just stepped off a runway, flawless, unshaken, and free. The call came the next morning. "Elena," Daniel said, voice grave. "You remember that guy you used to model for, Adrian Cross?" She pretended to think. Vaguely. "Why?" "He was found dead last night. Police think it was suicide." She gasped, perfectly timed. "Oh my God. That's awful. I had no idea he was struggling." "Me neither. I only recognized the name from some gallery invitations we got months ago." She clutched the phone tighter. Poor guy. But in her mind, she was already 5 moves ahead. Detective Nora Graves wasn't buying the suicide theory. She stood in Adrian Cross's dimly lit apartment, eyeing the setup like a hunter watching prey. Something about the scene felt too clean. Too organized. "No signs of a struggle," said Officer Delaney beside her. Graves nodded. "Exactly." Delaney frowned. "You think someone staged this?" "Maybe. Or maybe he was too drugged to fight back." She glanced at the wine glass on the table. "Toxicology will tell us more." "And motive?" Graves looked toward a half-finished painting leaning against the wall, a portrait of a woman with long, dark hair. "Start with her." That afternoon, Elena stood at her kitchen island, slicing strawberries with surgical precision. Daniel was reading the paper across from her, sipping his espresso. She felt his eyes linger on her a little longer than usual. "You okay?" he asked. She smiled. "Of course." "Why?" He hesitated. "You just seem distant." "I'm just thinking about Adrian," she said, laying the fruit into a crystal bowl. "It's always shocking, you know? How people can hide so much pain." Daniel reached for her hand. "That's why I'm glad we don't keep secrets." Elena kissed his cheek and whispered, "Me too." Inside, she felt the sting of irony. Chloe was a waitress at the Silver Room, the upscale lounge where Adrian and Elena had often met before switching to more discreet hotels. She wasn't beautiful in the classical sense. She had sharp edges, messy hair, and a tendency to talk too much. But she had a sharp memory, and a sharper instinct for danger. The night Adrian died, Chloe had seen something odd. Adrian had been unusually tense when he stopped in earlier that evening. He'd ordered a drink, checked his phone a dozen times, then abruptly left. "Meeting someone?" she had teased. He didn't answer. Just smirked and walked out. 2 days later, Chloe saw the death notice in the paper. Then a photo. Then the face beside him in the background of an old event post, Elena Harper. And Chloe remembered the woman. Expensive. Polished. Always wore red lipstick. Always sat facing the wall. Chloe had served her 5 or 6 times. Something about it didn't sit right. It had been a week of dead ends. Adrian's financials were a mess, his phone wiped, and his laptop conveniently missing. But the toxicology report came back, traces of zolpidem, a heavy sedative. More than enough to keep a man semi-conscious, but not enough to kill. So who drugged him? Graves murmured. The belt used to strangle him had no fingerprints, no fibers, no DNA. Nothing. Whoever did it was careful. Very careful. But then she got the call, from a waitress named Chloe Dane. "I don't know what you're working on," Chloe said, "but the dead guy, Adrian, used to meet this lady here. She was classy. Dangerous classy. Always kept her face low, but I remember the ring. Big emerald on her right hand. She was married. I'm sure of it." Graves leaned in. "You remember her name?" "No. But I remember the ring. And the perfume, something French and expensive. Would you recognize her if you saw her? Chloe didn't hesitate. In a second. Her confidence had turned to carelessness. After Adrian's death, she began deleting old messages, wiping her burner phones, and burning notes. But she forgot one thing, her emails. And Adrian, arrogant as he was, had forwarded one of her encrypted messages to a friend weeks earlier, as leverage, he once joked. That friend? A struggling journalist named Miles Tate. And now Miles was digging through Adrian's digital footprint for a story he hoped would pay his rent. When he saw the name Elena Harper, his eyes lit up. Wife of Daniel Harper? The tech guy? He started making calls. It was a burner number. One she didn't recognize. I know what you did. Meet me. Alone. Tonight. Or I talk. Her fingers froze. It wasn't from Miles. It was from Chloe. Elena felt her pulse spike, but her face remained calm. She looked across the dinner table at Daniel, who was telling her about a keynote he was preparing. She smiled. Nodded. Laughed. Inside, her mind was calculating Chloe's death. Chloe agreed to meet at a closed art gallery 2 blocks from where Adrian died. Elena wore gloves, all black, and carried a hidden knife in her boot. She didn't trust poison again, too slow. Too unpredictable. Chloe arrived late, suspicious and snarky. You look just like the ghost I remember, she said. Elena tilted her head. You made a mistake contacting me. No, Chloe said, stepping closer. You did. People like you always think they're smarter than everyone else. But your lipstick leaves stains. And you're not invisible. Elena smiled softly. No, but I'm very good at disappearing. She moved fast. The knife was in her hand before Chloe could blink. But Chloe fought back. Fierce. Wild. Elena slashed her arm. Chloe screamed. They struggled, crashing into a sculpture. Alarms shrieked. Lights flashed. Panicked, Elena stabbed her in the side, once, twice, 3 times. Then silence. She wiped the knife, grabbed Chloe's phone, and vanished before security arrived. She barely made it home. Daniel sat stunned at the breakfast table. Another murder, he muttered. This one's close to Adrian's apartment. Elena poured tea with steady hands. Do they know who did it? No. But a detective says the two might be connected. She stirred sugar into her cup, hiding her trembling fingers. I hope they catch whoever it is, she whispered. Daniel nodded. Me too. The morning after Chloe Dane's murder, Detective Nora Graves stood in the center of the crime scene, her jaw tense, eyes scanning the chaos inside the gallery. Blood stained the marble floor. A shattered sculpture lay in pieces beside the victim. This wasn't a robbery. It wasn't random. It was personal. Security got footage, Officer Delaney said, handing her a tablet. The grainy black and white feed showed only fragments, a figure in black, gloved hands, swift movements. But something caught Graves' eye. Pause there, she said. In one frame, barely visible, the attacker's sleeve lifted just enough to expose a glimpse of skin and something green. An emerald ring. Her breath caught. The same ring Chloe had described. This was the same woman, she whispered. She killed Adrian, and now Chloe. Then came another break, Chloe's phone. It had been locked, but tech cracked it. Buried in the call logs was a single number Chloe had dialed before her death. A disposable line. Recently disconnected. Graves traced it through the last tower ping, Midtown, near Harper Technologies headquarters. That was enough for a visit. Elena opened the door with her usual poise, fresh-faced, casually elegant, dressed in white silk like she hadn't been cleaning blood off her hands 12 hours ago. "Detective Graves, was it?" she asked, surprised but smiling. Graves noticed the subtle tightening around her eyes. Fear, hidden well, but not perfectly. "We're revisiting a few names connected to Adrian Cross," Graves said. "Mind if I ask you a few questions?" "Of course," Elena said smoothly, stepping aside. Graves looked around the foyer, immaculate, expensive, cold. "I understand you knew Adrian?" Elena nodded. "I modeled for him years ago. Just a few portraits. We weren't close." "Odd. Witnesses say you met him often. At lounges. Hotels." Elena laughed gently. "I think someone's been embellishing. I'm married, detective." Graves' gaze sharpened. "Being married doesn't erase history." Elena didn't flinch. "I have nothing to hide." But her eyes flicked, for half a second, toward the hallway. Graves noticed. "Do you wear jewelry often, Mrs. Harper?" the detective asked casually. "Sometimes." "An emerald ring?" "It was a gift. From my husband." "Mind if I see it?" Elena hesitated. "It's being cleaned." Graves smiled. "Of course it is." Daniel Harper sat in the study, staring at a picture on his phone. It had been sent anonymously. It showed Elena, arms wrapped around Adrian Cross, in a hotel hallway. Her hair was different, but the emerald ring was unmistakable. His heart sank. He heard her footsteps behind him. Quickly, he slipped the phone into his pocket. "Everything okay?" Elena asked. He nodded. "Just work stuff." But his voice cracked, and Elena heard it. She smiled and walked over to kiss his forehead. "I worry about you," she said. "I worry about you too," he replied, holding her just a little too long. She ran the partial print from Chloe's phone against the Harper estate staff registry. No match. Then she checked for past police records. Nothing. But Graves didn't believe in coincidences. She dug into Elena Harper's past, her real past. Before the name change. Before the marriage. What she found chilled her: Elena Carter. Real name. Born in Missouri. No criminal record. But her ex-boyfriend, a wealthy investment broker, had died in a suspicious house fire 8 years ago. Case ruled accidental. But Elena had inherited a small trust fund from him. And 2 months later, changed her name and moved to New York. Graves now had a profile: a woman who kills when threatened, and makes it look like fate. Elena knew she had to move fast. She couldn't kill the detective. Too risky. But she could silence Miles Tate, the journalist who had been sniffing around after getting Adrian's forwarded email. He'd even contacted Daniel anonymously, pretending to be a PR rep digging for background. Elena had hacked his email after spotting his name in Chloe's call history. Miles was planning to go public. He had emails. Photos. Dates. If she didn't stop him, it would all fall apart. She scheduled a meeting. Claimed she was an inside source ready to blow the whistle on Harper Tech. He agreed, of course. Journalists always did when bait smelled like scandal. They met in an abandoned subway tunnel, Miles's idea, thinking it was safer than a hotel. It was dark, damp, and filled with the echoes of trains and old ghosts. Elena wore a gray trench coat, face hidden beneath a scarf. She held a small pistol inside her bag, cold and metallic against her thigh. Miles appeared, grinning nervously. Didn't expect someone so elegant. She smiled. You'll be surprised at what I am. He started to unzip his bag, probably to show files. But Elena pulled the gun first. One shot. Right between the eyes. Clean. Silent. Efficient. She dumped the body into the maintenance shaft, wiped her prints, and vanished into the dark. Back at home. Elena poured herself wine and sat by the fireplace. 3 murders. 3 secrets buried. But something still felt off. She turned and saw Daniel watching her from the hallway. His expression unreadable. "Wine?" she asked. He shook his head. "No. Just thinking." She walked over, wrapped her arms around him. "We're okay, right?" she whispered. Daniel didn't answer. But in his pocket, his hand gripped the USB drive that held copies of Adrian's emails. He had already spoken to Detective Graves. The camera blinked red. The interviewer, a young journalist from the New Yorker, adjusted her mic and glanced at the woman seated across the steel table. Elena Harper, once the face of New York high society, now wore a pale beige jumpsuit. Her face was still stunning, though a touch leaner, her eyes colder, sharper. "You were convicted of 3 murders," the journalist said. "Do you believe you were guilty?" Elena tilted her head, a small smile curling on her lips. "I believe," she said slowly, "that survival isn't always legal." The interviewer leaned forward. "Was it worth it?" Elena didn't answer at first. Her fingers, still delicate and manicured, traced the edge of the metal table. She wore no jewelry now, but she still tapped that empty spot on her ring finger as if the emerald was still there. "No one ever asks that," she finally whispered. "Was he worth it?" Weeks after the trial, Daniel visited the prison. He stood on the other side of the glass partition, picking up the receiver. Elena entered calmly, no handcuffs this time, just quiet dignity. "I didn't expect you," she said. "I had to know," Daniel replied. "Why Adrian? Why kill him?" She sighed. "He wasn't just an affair. He was going to ruin me. I told him I was ending things." He laughed. "Said he had everything saved, ready to expose me." "And Chloe?" She figured it out. She wasn't even supposed to matter. Daniel's voice broke. "And Miles? I never even knew his name. Just that he had files, emails, timelines." "You were next, Daniel. If I hadn't run, if you hadn't trapped me." She paused. "I would have had to choose." Daniel stared at her like she was a stranger in his wife's skin. "I loved you," he whispered. She gave a small nod. "That was your mistake." Graves stood over a box of files in her apartment. Case closed. Verdict delivered. Another monster caged behind bars. But as she looked at Elena's file, one line haunted her. She never cried. Not once. Not even at sentencing. She poured herself a glass of wine and whispered, because she wasn't done. Months later, a maintenance worker at Harper Tower discovered a hidden envelope sealed inside a wall during renovation. It was addressed to the one who survives me. Inside. A USB drive. A written confession. A photo of a 4th man. Graves received the call. She reviewed the contents. The man in the photo? Eric Benson, the one from the Missouri fire. The one presumed an accident. Only, it wasn't. He was poisoned. The fire was staged. Elena's first murder. Graves exhaled sharply. She's been killing for over a decade. She opened the confession. Elena's handwriting was elegant, as always. "If you're reading this, it means I didn't win. But I need you to understand. Everything I did was never about love. It was about not being small. Women like me don't get caught. Unless we choose to."